Welcome to Honcho on the Air, a podcast that brings you the latest talks and the latest trends in business, technology, innovation, and the candid side of C-level executives. Each week on this season, we explore topics and issues on human resources, management, leadership, HR technology, recruiting, talent management, organizational culture, and strategic HR.
Honcho on the Air is sponsored by Aces Business. Trust the expert. Now back to the show.
Our guest today is Alpha Omega Aquino. She is the Chief People Officer of Home Credit Philippines with experience in the fields of outsourcing, insurance, and telecommunications. She's currently transitioning to her passion, which is human resources. Alpha will be sharing with us how can professionals pivot to a new role. Hi, Alpha, and thanks for joining us.
Hi, Claire. Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me as well.
Alpha, tell us about your company.
Okay, so Home Credit is a consumer finance company. You see us everywhere. We transform how people shop, as well as we're very inclusive. As you know, we make sure that you are part of our the economy. So if you do look for a job and you try to think that you want to pivot, very much open. You can visit our website as well as our Life at Home Credit in Facebook and our LinkedIn as well, and have a chat with us with your career aspirations, and we will definitely help you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Claire.
Alpha, very interesting topic. I'm sure many can relate. Pivot was a popular word in 2020, which carries on to today, to this year. So, in your experience, what was this pivot for you?
Well, actually, it's not really 2020 for me. So, I was working overseas for the last 15 years in Indonesia. And when I came home in 2017, I thought I'll be retiring by then because I left Indonesia as the CEO for Teleperformance Indonesia as well as Singapore. And I came back and then I said, what's next for me after having been working for 15 years outside the Philippines. So I said, maybe it's time for me to do my passion and see how it goes. And then, I started taking up courses in HR and then also networking within the community of HR. I mean, most of my friends anyway are coming from that industry. So I said, why not? And I took up the certification from SHRM, which is a global company or global certification for HR professionals. Mm-hmm. And then that's what happened. And then for some reasons, I don't know, Home Credit found me back in 2019 and interviewed me for a role, actually not in HR. It's actually for a head of operations. But, I live in Cavite and the office back then, up until now, is in Vertis. So you can just imagine, oh my God, it's going to Singapore one way every time, traveling to and fro. So a couple of weeks after that, they asked me, if I wanted to explore possibilities of working in the HR department. And I said, why not?
Oh, that's so interesting. And when did you begin this HR position?
So I started HR in Home Credit officially in March of 2019. Well, officially in contract, it's April 1st. So I thought they were joking, honestly, because it's April Fool's Day, right? But not. So they hired me as the head of talent acquisition back in April 1, 2019. And then I got promoted just recently, March of 2020.
Okay. So it was a constant transition and a journey, sort of. But what inspired you at some point there, to shift career?
Okay. Back in 2000, that was my first time to work overseas, and that's in Singapore. I was hired as the recruitment manager, ironically, being a Filipino working in a Singapore company. And then in fast forward, when I got promoted as CEO of Teleperformance Indonesia, I didn't have an HR head. And it was really, really painful for me for the first 6 months of doing the role and yet not having anyone. And by the way, Indonesia, have different sets of labor regulations and laws as well, which I'm kind of familiar and I speak fluent Bahasa, but still, HR is very critical. And then I decided back then, like, if only HR head would think like business people and vice versa, then it will be a very powerful organization. So when I came back in 2017, I intentionally really wanted to be an advocate of, CEO can also be HR people, and
Mhm.
HR people can also be CEO. So I
Mhm.
started looking at those avenues, I guess, and trying to prove my point. And lo and behold, I'm now the chief people officer of Home Credit.
Right. Okay. So, in your opinion, based on your experience, with your business side of your background and your people skills and all that, are you able to merge all these skills and experience in your past work to where you are today? How important is it to have all these?
Very, very important. I think first and foremost, we've been talking about, HR having the sit at a table, HR having the voice and the room, that sort of thing, and HR typically being treated as just the admin. You just execute. We know what to do. You just execute and make it happen. Hire and fire. That's what we are known for. Well, that's a traditional HR. So my being in the business for the longest time, I think gave me that credibility to the in the boardroom that whatever that you're talking about, I do understand that. It just so happened that I have an advantage even more because my passion has always been in people, developing them, and you're trying to understand. And people has always been and will always be the asset of the company, whether other people will say otherwise. But I think everyone will agree that it is indeed the most critical asset in your company, and that helped me a lot, understanding both facets of the business as well as the people side.
Mhm. And with your position currently, what were the challenges or are the present challenges that you are faced with?
Well, first and foremost, I got the role in March 1st, 2020. As you know, March 16 was a lockdown.
Mhm.
So it was I think from March up until December, well, up until now, this is the best ever onboarding. I was telling my chief global people officer that, this is the best onboarding for anyone because there's no precedence. Everything came as a surprise for everyone. And then
Mhm.
even my friends, who's very much seniors in HR, also are trying to invent and trying to look at all the things that, at the end of the day, we just have to take care of the people. Then going back in, oh my God, this is just common sense. And if you're not sincere, I guess, and humble enough to say that, I don't know, can you help me with it, then it will never work. So those are the things, I guess, that had helped me go through that challenges. I would say is still this, Filipinos, I think, and mostly Asians are very social people, and now we're in isolation. So how do you get in touch with them? How do you measure their performance? Because we're very much structured before. Now everything is all based, going to be based, and still is going to be trust, which most often companies would always think twice. Like, how would I know my people are working at home? How are they going to deliver? That sort of questions that has been asked repeatedly. And I think that's going to be further the challenge on how do you manage that.
Mhm. And like you said, how do you manage that? So, how have you been managing that? You and your team, and even your colleagues who are also in the same industry. How has it been for you guys?
Well, it's fantastic, I would say. Well, there's a lot of challenges for sure in 2020, and then most of us were not saved from the fact that we had to do business optimization as well. And that's the fact of the matter. I mean, we are a company that has a lot of employees in the shopping malls. The shopping malls were closed. So, and then not to mention that they're even now that they're open, it doesn't mean that customers are coming in because they're still restricted in terms of the volume of the people that comes into the mall, and obviously the products that we sell as well due to the travel of the supplies that are coming to the Philippines. So a lot of things are happening. However, I think having been stripped of all of that, we go back to the basics. I mean, how do you now treat people with intentionally looking at their development? What can you do? What's within your control? And that's what we have been focusing on, and it has been working so far so good. I would say. I mean, it's It's not an easy ride, and we're not yet out of the woods for sure. But I think we're in the right path in doing so.
Honcho on the Air is sponsored by Globe Labs. Redefine possibilities. Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the follow button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Now back to the show.
Aside from the challenges, how about any learnings or insights that you've had within taking on this new role and position?
So it's basically three things, and I told this to my team. At the end of the day, don't ever forget to have the courage to be bold in your actions and be humble. If at the end of the day you don't know, so only three things I kept on telling them. And with all these things that have been happening, since there's a lot of things to do, a lot of priorities, so many things that we want to happen. I mean, at the end of the day, just focus on what's relevant, what's impactful, and what's purposeful. So I think it's super basic, but people tend to forget that because we're too busy. We're always in meetings and what have you. So now everything has to be intentional, and it's been working.
Mm-hmm. Were there any, maybe you would say, roadblocks in reaching a certain productivity or in your business? If there's a goal that you've had in mind or you want your team to accomplish, but because of what we are faced with and what we are experiencing right now, what are those roadblocks that you would say maybe hampered that progress or productivity, and how were you able to handle it or take care of it?
I think some of the roadblocks, as you know, when you talk about working from home or working from anywhere, as we call it, working from a Filipino home is totally different. I mean, most of the employees that we have lives in a 30, 60 square meter house with the families of like 4, 5, or 8. And then you have children who's doing online school. So bandwidth is being used by your children and then you as well. Then you have this type of calls and meetings. And then the good thing about that, I guess, would be, I mean, that's one of the roadblocks. So the efficiencies might be hampered in such a way that, you now don't have any separation between your work, no matter where you put your office or in the corner. I mean, your children will see you and you cannot tell the children to stop to bug you or what have you. But the good thing about that, and what I've noticed through the months, people have been very patient. In I think before COVID, if you're working from home and having a video call like this and suddenly your child or your pet appears, you will have that smirk on the manager's face, like, what are you doing? Now, it's like, okay, take your time. It's okay, don't worry. Then you have the chicken crawling or the dogs barking and say, okay, take your time. Oh, there's a construction happening in your house. Then it becomes an icebreaker and more relaxed conversation happens. So I think that's the advantage. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of advantages that had happened during the crisis. I mean, not just the disadvantages. And we're taking that more, and people are becoming more human, which, it's the best time for HR to leverage all of these things that have been happening. And we did. And we are leveraging those facts that people are now becoming more human, not just task-oriented, also people-oriented. And that's not me imposing policies and guidelines. It just becomes innate. Because we are all in the, as we call it, right? We're all in the same ocean, but different boats. But still, we're in the same ocean.
Mm-hmm. Now, do these factors, like you mentioned, working from home, and in this type of setting, does it hamper or does it stop or slow down the advancement of an employee or yourself, as an executive?
I think for us, it depends on how you look at it, but we're trying to, as much as possible, open that mindset to the people that, the world now is your playground, literally. Because as long as you have an internet at home, you can learn anything. There's a lot of certifications that are being given for free. We have also our certain platforms that we are using that you can also avail. Now, the only challenge is, like, do you have the time and the passion and the commitment to do so? Because now discipline is even more difficult. because you don't have, your friends that can just tap you, Claire, Alpha, come on, let's go to this training room and then have this training. It's just so different. And you still crave for the people interactions at the end of the day. Efficiencies would be hampered as well in terms of, yeah, not all the time PLDT or Globe or Smart is up. So if your internet is down, if your electricity is down as well, then you get hampered. However, our offices are open. I'm by the way in the office.
Hmm.
We're here in BGC, so our offices are open. We always tell our employees that one, safety is of priority. However, if you're struggling to work from your house, our offices in Spark, Audit, and Vertis are open, so you can just come and you can take your seat and then do your job accordingly.
Okay. Now, going back, Alpha, to our topic, which is pivoting to a new role, is there anything else you'd like to add? Perhaps to those people who are maybe contemplating or have been thinking about maybe, making a career change?
Yeah, I think this is the best time to do that, because it's now the skills have changed, and we've been talking about this for the longest time. That get some good skills. But I think for me, what worked is I went through my passion first, and then I learned how to do it with all the technical, as well as having the network of people who can support you as well. And that worked for me. So in terms of pivoting and doing a career shift, or even just upgrading your skills, it's really the best time to do it during this pandemic. I mean, there's no real excuse. I don't see any reason for you not to be able to do it, because you have all the access to do it. And time is just a matter of, sabi nga nila in Tagalog, if kung gusto may paraan, kung ayaw maraming dahilan. So there's always a way to do things if only you would put your mind and heart into it. And for me, it's kind of scary, honestly, Claire. It was very scary for me, because what's next for me. But I think the first thing that you need to understand is to do a self-evaluation, an assessment of yourself, and are you humble enough to accept roles that that are not a manager role, a supervisory role, because you have to learn it. I mean, I came in to Home Credit as head of talent acquisition. This was my job. That was my job 20 years ago. And yet I was willing to go back again because I don't know. And I have to relearn it again. And I have to unlearn what I had back in the days, and then learn again. So I always say, it's always unlearning, learn, and relearn. If you have those three things in your mind, and the humility to accept that some of the things you just don't know, and just ask for help, have that courage, then you will never go wrong.
Right. And the openness, because like you said, 20 years ago, the things were different those days, and now you have new technology, and there's just all sorts of new things to learn, right? And how do you manage that? If the do you have to be tech savvy? Do you need someone to train you? I mean, how are you able to adjust and learn all these new skills? Was it difficult?
Yeah, it was. It was difficult because, yeah, immediately that you think of all those roadblocks, right? You think of, do I have the time? Do I even know this? Do I have the money to buy these licenses for the access that you have in the internet? Do I have to get certification? At the end of the day, things like this. I mean, podcasts, you can just listen to podcasts, and most of them are for free. You can learn from YouTube, and most of the children are learning from YouTube. And I'm sure that they're earning even more than me just because of them being vloggers or influencers. And the best part, I guess, is, still to have in contact with your friends. I mean, I get my learnings, I get my coaching and mentoring from the people that I have met across all my entire career life and professional life as well. So maybe it's just a matter of, again, reaching out to those right people at the right time with the right questions, obviously, then you will for sure benefit from it. And that's what I've been getting up until now. I'm still getting a lot of support from these people that I trust, who will, never bring me any advice that is contrary to what I'm trying to achieve. And again, the honesty and the sincerity on my part to say that, hey friend, ano paano ba to? I don't know this. Can you give me some advice? I do, up until now, do reach out to these people.
Yeah. So basically, the resources are out there. It's
Absolutely.
just up to the person to go and get it and reach out, and maybe some patience. Patience can go a long way.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So, Alpha, anything else that you'd like to add? Maybe one more or two or three more pieces of advice that you'd like to give for those who are thinking about pivoting to a new career?
I think both for professional and personal advice, because I mean, my pivoting in terms of the new role professionally is also applicable to what I did personally, because I went back from, from Indonesia to the Philippines. I was comfortable in Indonesia, and yet, I still came home and back in the Philippines and do something that I want. So I think my advice is, again, don't ever, have that courage in spirit, boldness in your action, and humility to accept that, some things you just don't know, and you just need to ask for help, and for sure it will come. And then the rest will now follow. Of course, a lot of divine intervention, I would say, because I always say, like, at the end of the day, I do what I needed to do, a lot of prayers as I do it, but I do. I do something about it. I just don't dream of it. I go for it and seek out people who can help me make it happen.
Mhm. Well, wise words from you, Alpha. Thank you so much. I'm sure our audience enjoyed and learned a lot from that.
Thank you so much, Claire.
Thank you for joining us this week on Honcho on the Air. Make sure to visit our website, aseanhr.org, where you can subscribe to us on Spotify so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, make sure to like and subscribe to our social media pages to get the latest news and updates. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode.